Hola, amigas, and welcome to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm Dr. Guerra, your host. This podcast is designed for Millennial Latinas and is fueled by faith and culture. Ignite the fire within. Welcome back, mujeres, to another episode of the Gold Hoops and God podcast. In last week's episode, I talked about relationships and discerning whether or not it's time to let a relationship go. Today, I want to start us off with something fun. So 90s TV has been on my mind lately, and I want to start off by talking about a couple notable 90s shows. If you're a millennial, you will definitely recognize these shows. So this was prompted by a recent video that I saw online. It must have been on Instagram or something that I saw of Tia Mowry. Now, Tia Mowry is most known for a show called Sister Sister. So Tia's grown up now, obviously. She's in her 40s. And she recently got divorced from her ex-husband. His name is Corey Hardrick, and they divorced about a year ago, so in April 2023. And she's back in the dating game. So this video that I saw recently was of her sharing some of her dating horror stories, and it was hysterical. It was so funny. I mean, she's a very funny person, and so to hear her, facing the same kind of things that many of us face when we're dating and trying to get to know people, it was fantastic. It was hilarious. Turns out celebrities are just like us. So the rich and famous also have a tough time in dating. Who knew? And so just seeing her face again, it reminded me of the show that she was on with her actual sister. So the show was called Sister Sister, and the twins, Tia and Tamara, were on the show together. The show was on from 1994 to 1999, and it was a big hit. There was a lot of people that loved the show. It was really popular. So on the show, the premise of the show was that the sisters were separated at birth and that they kind of reconnect and they end up having like a blended family. And it's very cute. Anywho, yeah, Sister Sister was a great show. So another show that has been on my mind is the classic Beverly Hills 90210. Because a couple days ago, actually, by the time this airs, Shannon Doherty, who played a main character on 90210, passed away, sadly. And so, a lot of the other cast members have been, wishing their condolences and stuff like that. So it's sad. But it made me think about the show. And the show was on from 1990 to about 2000. So it was about a group of friends, growing up in Beverly Hills, right? And so it was super interesting seeing their drama, a lot of dating drama, of course. It was like the hot guys and the hot girls of school. Everyone back then, I remember, wanted to dress like Kelly or Donna or Brenda. Everyone was swooning over the guys. There was Dylan, it was like the bad boy. You have Brandon and David. It was epic. It really was epic because most of us watched the show when it aired, right? So way back when, there was no streaming services, and taping a show on VHS, yeah, you could do it, right? Like you could tape whatever on a VHS tape, but I don't know, like it was less common sometimes. And so most of us would actually like tune in. So let's say if the show is on like Thursdays at 7 p.m., you'd like be at your TV at 7 p.m. to watch it live. It was so fun. And I remember for a couple different shows, my friends and I would call each other. We'd call each other during the commercial break and be like, oh my God, can you believe she did that? Oh my God, he left her. Oh my God, da 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 da. I can't believe it, right? It was super fun. It was hilarious. It was a good time. So finally, a third show I wanted to mention, we're taking a trip down memory lane, a little nostalgia for you, is The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. All of us remember Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Oh my gosh, this was a show where Will Smith, right, of course, he moves in with his rich relatives. So he was living in Philadelphia, in West Philadelphia, born and raised, right? So his mom sent him away, sent him to go live with his family in Bel Air. So Will was sent to California to live with his rich aunt and uncle, Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv, and their kids to go to school in Bel Air. So, of course, that was a culture shock for him. He's very funny, Will Smith being Will Smith. It was a fun show. It was a really great show. A lot of energy, a lot of fun music, some really memorable characters like the Carlton, right? The Carlton dance. You remember the Carlton dance? Oh my God. And Hillary. Hillary was like super bougie, a little, a little ditzy, if you will. It was fun. It was a great show. There's a lot of other shows that are worth mentioning, like Saved by the Bell, Family Matters. Oh my gosh, there was a whole lineup, like Full House. Oh man, so good. It's really great shows. So, shifting gears a little bit, the common thread being sister, sister, right, on this episode. So, I wanted to spend the next part of the episode talking about a different kind of sister. So, in the Roman Catholic Church, women who join the church and make a commitment to the church are called sisters, right? So there are women who take vows, right? Usually a vow of celibacy, chastity, obedience. The vows vary from order to order, but those are some of the common ones. And these women take a vow to belong to a religious order. And I wanted to talk about three really significant sisters, and these are in chronological order. But I wanted to share about them because I think that in a lot of ways, their joining a religious order was something very feminist. And honestly, sisters are very underrated. So within the patriarchal structure, right, within the very patriarchal structure of the Catholic Church, steeped in tradition, there isn't a lot of room for women. There isn't a lot of opportunities for women, especially in leadership, things like that. So becoming a sister or joining a religious order is one of the very few options that women have. So I want to start us off with Teresa of Avila. So Teresa of Avila was born in Spain. She was from Avila, Spain, and she was born March 28th of 1515, so 16th century. Teresa came from a big family, and unfortunately, her mother died when she was very young. She was about like 14, 15 years old. And after her mom died, she was basically entrusted to the care of the Augustinian nuns. So she kind of was sent to go live with the Augustinian nuns. In 1535, she decided to join the Carmelite order. She's very well known for her visions. She had what we call like ecstatic visions, very interesting. I believe there's a really famous sculpture, possibly by Bernini, I think it is, of the ecstasy of Saint Teresa. And it's a bit, it has a bit of a sexual element to it, shall we say. It's very interesting. So Teresa is known for this, and she moved into a period of like increasingly ecstatic experiences, in which she was focusing more and more on Christ's passion. So she had a very deep, rich spiritual life and spirituality. She's known as a mystic. So in Christian spirituality, she is one of the most important mystics, her and St. John of the Cross, who I'll talk about in a second. But from about 1516 till her death, she struggled and she really wanted to broaden the Discalced Carmelite movement. So she was kind of a reformer in her own right. So during the mid 1560s, she wrote The Way of Perfection and the Meditations on the Canticle. In 1567, she met St. John of the Cross, and another very important Christian mystic in the Catholic Church. He wrote Dark Night of the Soul, and that is a really powerful book, especially if you're going through a spiritual desert, struggling in your own spirituality. It is a very powerful and inspiring book in its own right. Okay. So St. John and Teresa of Avila worked together, and they wanted to reform the Carmelite order. Teresa passed away in 1582, and she left a pretty significant legacy of her writing. And it really highlights the importance of Christian mysticism. So, Interior Castle is perhaps her most famous work. It's the work that is most read in theology classes and religion classes. Yeah, she's a pretty fascinating woman. All right, so we're moving on to a second sister that I want to talk about, and that is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. So, Sor Juana was born in what we call New Spain. So this is during the colonial period. She's known as a self-taught scholar and poet. She was from this Spanish golden age, essentially, and she really didn't have the opportunity to go to school. So that's why she was self-taught, and she was incredibly intelligent. She learned Greek, Latin. She wrote about science. She wrote poetry. I mean, everything, you name it. She was so brilliant. She ended up joining a convent mostly because that was a way for her to be able to write and to study in peace. You know, way back when, it's important to remember that the options for women were very limited. It was either get married or join a convent. Those were the basic options if you're thinking about, you know, if we're thinking 15th, 16th century. So she became very popular. Her writing was well received. She became a very famous poet. Her work is read often in poetry classes, in like Spanish literature classes, poetry classes. And then she also has this theological side. I love Sor Juana. Reading her really changed my life because it was the first time that I saw this bridging of Spanish literature and theology. So she's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, because of the pressure of the Inquisition and some other political issues, she had to cease writing. A lot of her books and personal items were burned. They were taken away from her, they were burned. And she kind of had to dull her shine, for lack of a better word. And she ended up spending her latter years just caring for her other sisters, right? There was a plague or some kind of disease happening at that time. And unfortunately, she contracted it and died. She was fairly young when she died. She was like in her late 40s, perhaps. So, yeah, Sor Juana is amazing. But a third person that I want to talk about is also close to my heart. So, Corita Kent, she is a more contemporary nun or contemporary sister that I wanted to talk about. So, Corita Kent, she lived from 1918 to 1987, and she was part of the religious order called the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And I've shared in the podcast before that I went to Immaculate Heart High School here in Los Angeles. Now, Immaculate Heart has a fascinating history. The Immaculate Heart nuns are really known as like rebel nuns. They're very outspoken. They're very feminist, you know, in terms of, in ways that in shorthand, right? In shorthand, I can just say that they're very feminist. They want to help form young women with great heart. I think that if I remember the motto, it's like great heart and right conscience. It was a great school. It was a really, I recommend it. It was a really great high school. I met a lot of amazing people there during that time. And I know that I've mentioned Immaculate Heart in the past in a previous episode. So, Corita Kent. So, Corita Kent, she's really well known as an artist. She was a fantastic artist and educator and really an advocate for social justice. She entered the religious order at 18, so she was very young when she entered the Immaculate Heart of Mary community. And eventually she taught at Immaculate Heart and had the art department at Immaculate Heart College. So during the course of her career, her artwork evolved from using figurative and religious imagery to incorporating advertising images and slogans, including popular song lyrics, biblical verses, and literature. So she was incredibly creative. And what I will say is she basically pushed the boundaries of what religious art would be considered. And again, this was in the 60s. So it makes sense, right? In the 60s, it was a time of revolution. It was a new era. People were thinking about all kinds of things during that time period and just doing things differently, I would say. So throughout the 1960s, her work became increasingly political, and she encouraged her viewers to consider issues of poverty, racism, and social justice. So her work was very social justice oriented. It was not just pretty pictures to look at, cute images. No, no. She very much wanted to bring attention to issues of poverty that were happening, racism, and issues of injustice. So this is interesting. In 1968, she actually made a big decision and she left the order. So she left the Immaculate Heart of Mary order and she moved to Boston. So in 1970, her work evolved. So this is kind of the evolution of her work. So in 1970, her work evolved into a bit more introspective, which was, of course, like influenced by her new living environment and being in a secular life. So instead of being in the religious life, which she was, um, and being part of the Immaculate Heart Order, now she was living in Boston, experiencing the world in a whole new way. And so that, of course, also influenced um, her art. And then, unfortunately, she was also battling cancer. So that definitely shaped her as well. She remained very active in social causes until her death in 1986. So at the time of her death, she was very prolific. So she had created almost 800 serigraph editions. So she was into printmaking. That was like her main method of creating art was printmaking. And there was thousands of watercolors that she created and innumerable, public and private commissions. So she was a really prolific artist, really amazing. And yeah, I in this episode I wanted to talk about these fun memories of youth, right? Of growing up in the 90s, 2000s, and the shows that made us laugh. I think sometimes we get really caught up in the stress, the anxiety, the worry of adulthood, of being adults. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and have fun. I think more and more, especially folks who are going through therapy or kind of on this healing journey, there's a lot of conversation about healing the inner child. And I think that's so important. So I wanted to talk about those fun shows as a way to encourage us to heal our inner child. Do the things that make you happy. Do the things that make you happy. Watch a silly TV show from way back when, or a movie that you used to like, or, go to your favorite I don't know, an old restaurant that you used to go to in college or something, if it's still there, like, why not? Sometimes it's fun. Like, sometimes it just reminds us of a simpler time. So I encourage all of us to do that. And then in terms of the sisters, the religious order sisters, yeah, more and more, I have such a tremendous respect for the religious orders sisters. And I'll tell you why. I am very much an active Roman Catholic. I've studied religion and theology for so long, for a very long time, growing up in the Catholic Church, etc., and still attending to this day. I really feel like the religious order sisters are the unsung heroes. And this is coming from, my time at Immaculate Heart. I taught at an all-girls high school called Mercy High School. The Mercy Sisters are amazing too. That was in San Francisco that I was teaching high school for 3 years there. In Loyola Marymount. So it's Loyola, which represents the Jesuits, but it's also the Marymount sisters. So even, so throughout my life, I've come across these amazing women that honestly are revolutionary and very feminist in their own way. I really feel like they hold down the fort of the religious, of the church of Christianity in so many ways, and they don't get recognized. They rarely get the recognition and support that they should. And so I felt like, you know what, I'm gonna spend some time talking about them and do a little shout out in case people didn't know about these famous nuns, famous sisters, as it were. Okay. So, my dears, as we wrap up today's episode, for your soul work this week, I want you to reflect on what are the things that brought you joy as a kid, as I was just mentioning. What were the things that you used to really enjoy? Or maybe, digging a little deeper, what were the things that you were not allowed to do, or not allowed to buy, or not allowed to see as a kid? Like, let's say it could be something silly. Let's say growing up as a kid, if you were not allowed to have Cocoa Puffs for cereal, I promise you, go buy a small box of Cocoa Puffs and just enjoying that moment. It's going to be special. I promise. Those little things like that, as silly as they sound, or if it was Rocky Road ice cream and your family only liked to buy chocolate chip, I don't know, right? Things like that. I know those are food related, but let's say, going to the beach. Let's say your family didn't really like going to the beach, but you love the water and you love to swim. Try to go to the beach sometime, or try to go to the pool. Things like that. Do the things that make your heart sing. Do the things that really make your inner child happy. Because in healing, part of healing, rather, part of it is parenting our own inner child. For many of us, our parents do the best they can, of course, right? They try their best. I understand that people have different relationships and different challenges with their family, with their parents. I absolutely respect and understand that. With that being said, all of us, to some degree or another, the reparenting happens, right? To some degree or another, the healing needs to happen. So I'm all about like that internal growth, that personal development. So that's why I kind of encourage my listeners to do the same. Another way that you can think about this episode in terms of the soul work or homework is to spend some time reflecting on women who broke the mold. So this can be your idols. This can be it could be an actress, singer. It could be somebody that you know in real life, like a friend of yours, whatever it may be. Right? Thinking about these women who broke the mold. And as I mentioned, the nuns in the Catholic Church get very little recognition. And so I encourage you that if there's anyone in your life that you look up to, that you really look up to, and that for you, you feel like they broke the mold. Sometimes the black sheep are the most healed people, to be honest. So yeah, think about it. It could be anyone. Honestly, it could be anyone. Think of anyone who has been essential in your life or in your community, and find a way to thank them. If talk to them directly, send them a little text message, or send them a note on social media. Even if it's a celebrity or something, why not, right? Why not, like, send a little note? It doesn't hurt to send something positive. And the reason I'm saying this is because gratitude is so important. Gratitude really is a foundation of so many things. It's a foundation of living a full and happy life, I think. Because without gratitude, we're always in that lack mindset, in that lack mentality. And so by expressing gratitude outwardly, I think it is a really beautiful thing. Okay, mujeres. So a little preview for next week. Next week is going to be my final episode of season 1. Yes. Oh my gosh. It'll be episode 10. So episode 10, I'm going to give you my top 10. So I'm going to share my top 10 highest recommended books. So these are books that have changed my life. Some of them will be personal development books. Some of them will be more literature. Some of them will be Latino theology texts. It'll be a variety. So hopefully folks can find something that they resonate with. Please help me spread the word. I hope that you like this podcast episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help your girl out. So until next time, ciao for now. Bye. Thanks again for tuning in to the Gold Hoops and God podcast with Dr. Guerra. If you enjoyed my content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at goldhoops_God. New episodes are available each Wednesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Ciao for now.